Honestly, I probably was not going to do this video, despite me doing a Drajeweled video very early on in Drajeweld's life cycle. Then they released, Drajeweled Ignis, and they released Drajeweled Mask, and that was that was fun. And then they released Drajeweled Ignis, whose power level was just so high up above everything that it kind of made it really, really strong, and a lot of people were, grade 4s, grade 4s were already really, controversial in Vanguard, and now they release such a strong grade 4. People were worried that Drajeweled Ignis will eventually get a promo that would like superior, right? Thankfully, they never did that, because frankly, I think a turn 3 Drajeweled Ignis would simply end this format outright. But then further down the line, when Bushiroad realized, hey, we can put Michiru back in the anime, we don't have to write him out of the show, just like what they did with Drajeweled Ignis, because they got enough money to pay the voice actor or something. Then they gave us this. What? Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Season4 here. Today I am back to talk about Drajeweled Magnus as a deck. But that's a lie. This video is not about Drajeweled Magnus. Because this deck, or this support wave, has been so controversial as a whole. People just hate this thing, and for really good reason. Drajeweled Magnus seems like such a weird direction to bring the deck after they already gave it such a strong pinnacle in Ignis, and then they gave it more support in DZBT10 with Little Saga and stuff. That now it just seems like a weird caveat to go back and go, okay, we're gonna change the weakest part of the deck, Drajeweled, which is like, sure, but what are you changing him to? Oh yeah, we're just gonna make him Bastion Accord, which like, I don't know. The difference between Bastion Accord and for Drajeweled Magnus is that Bastion Accord actually had synergy with Prime, and even in the later support, they still work together to the fact that you can still play either pure Prime or pure Accord. I may just do a video on the modern Accord. We'll see if people actually want to see that. But for Magnus though, no, it's weird. But you know what? Today's video, I'm gonna break down the strengths and weaknesses of Drajeweled Magnus, and also show you a deck profile with Drajeweled Ignis. So this video that you're gonna see right here, the video I'm uploading for the main channel, is I'm gonna be showing your Magnus as well as Ignis. Because frankly, I think this is probably the cheapest way moving forward, because a lot of the Ignis support was reprinted in the Michiru master deck, and frankly they're all commons, so you can buy the whole Ignis support wave for less than 2,000 yen, which I actually did. It's so cheap now, and considering that Ignis is never been hit by the ban list, despite him being on the watch list, it is a really strong deck. And the Magnus stuff is not too expensive. It is pricey, it is Drajeweled, but it's not too bad, right? Especially because half of your deck is a reprinted common bulk. But for those of you who do not like Ignis anymore because you don't like winning, or you just don't like Ignis as an identity, I've got somewhat good news. In the links in the description for my channel members, I'm going to actually upload the deck list I have for a pure Drajeweled Magnus, because I think it's fun to explore both ends. I had a lot of fun testing both this deck and Pure Magnus, but I think the issue I have with Pure Magnus is that most of the deck is just generics, whereas for the Ignis deck, half of it is just reprinted, right? So it's not too difficult to imagine what's in my deck. So I'm still going to keep most of the discussion here, but for those of you who are supporting me a bit extra, helping my work, I'm going to drop the Drajeweled Magnus pure deck list for my channel members for their this month's member list. So if you're interested in checking a look at that, or if you are interested in my other list that I upload there, consider joining my members, because it does support me in doing more videos and being able to afford more cards, and thus being able to do more videos. It's a self-eating loop, right? And also means I don't have to spend too much time on my job, right? So yeah, that being said, let's actually go into the deck per se. Like I said, this is going to be the pure Drajeweled. Sorry, this is going to be the Ignis and Magnus list, because frankly, I think this is the list most people will actually end up playing, and you'll see why. So our right line is immediately where we hit a wall. We can play the new right line, right? We can absolutely play the brand new ones from DZBT10, but, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this, you can almost at 100% no loss to yourself play the original right line. And that's because the new and old right line do very different things, but it depends on how you want to build the deck. The only similarity that every Drajeweled deck will have is that right now you need to play Magnus in the right deck. This is the only similarity that these decks will share. If anyone is telling you I'm playing trial deck Drajeweled, tell them get out, it's not working. But if you want to play either right line, very frankly, you actually can. And that's a strange thing that I don't see a lot of people actually discussing about, but yeah, sure, I will be the first then, if no one else has yet. I'm going to talk about the new right line first, as a whole, because those are the cards you frankly may not have heard of yet. This is Julius Dracokid Galore. Then you have Jewel Core Dragon Luster. Right? Eh? No, that's not Luster. This is Glint, yeah. So what does Glint do is when you write Jewel Dragon Luster, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 2 cards from among them with different grades, put it into your soul and shuffle the deck. And then for the new Luster, his skill is when rolled upon by a grade 3 or greater unit of Drajeweled, soul charge 1. If you have this guy, Glint in the soul, you draw a card. And then the other Vanguard skill is just, during a turn, if your Vanguard is Drajeweled Magnus, this unit gets 5,000 power. At face value, you may say, oh miss, this sounds pretty alright. But if you notice something, you've lost something very important. And you've gained something important too. Your old right line is as follows. This is Julius Dracokid. This is the original Jewel Core, who says when rolled upon by the original Jewel need, you call this unit to a rearguard circle. And when this unit attacks or boosts, it gets 5,000 power. At the end of the battle, it goes back into the soul. And of course, the original Jewel need says when this unit attack hits, you soul charge 1. And when rolled upon by a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Drajeweled in its name, you can soul charge 1. And if you have 3 more cards of different grade, you draw 1. Now, immediately, you're going to notice that there is a huge power difference in the right line. And not in the way you think. Because, yes, there is a very huge difference here. Julius Dracokid, Jewel Core Dragon Glint is a way to make sure that you can consistently build your soul in the best way possible, right? You get to top 5, add 2 cards of different grade, shuffle your deck. This is really good in terms of being able to put your key pieces in your soul. And Drajeweled now has a lot of ways to call cards out from the soul, which you will see later. And therefore, this skill becomes even more stronger when you think about it in that context. But the original guy is a 13k attacker or booster for free for 1 turn. And that is a lot of early aggression you are throwing out the window. Which is the correct way to play? There is none. There actually is no correct answer. If your deck for Drajeweled needs early aggression, which a lot of Drajeweled decks nowadays actually don't have early aggression because they kind of forgot about it, I recommend you to keep the original right line. If you need the pieces in soul and you've solved the early aggression, then play the new right line, because the new right line is so much better at building soul. But the original right line gives you a lot more firepower in the early game, which does have its merits as well. As for the grade 2s are functionally doing the same thing. They all soul charge 1 when you ride, and then you draw a card. The only difference is that this guy has 1 extra skill, which is on hit you soul charge 1. But other than that, no difference, right? Because you're never calling this out to the rearguard circle. That's just not happening. So as a whole, if you do evaluate it, this right line is much better when it comes to building soul. But this right line, the original right line, is a lot better when it comes to early aggression. I am bringing up a lot of key differences between Drajeweled versions in this video, which is why this video will be very long, for a segment at the end, which I hope you guys stay till the end, because this really needs to be a discussion. It needs to be held, very honestly. I feel that nobody's actually willing to talk about this deck in full because everyone's just, oh, Drajeweld's bad, they did not make it good. But actually, it is good, just not in a conventional way. The only card that for resoundingly 100% yes will be played in the right deck is, of course, the new Drajeweled Magnus. Drajeweled Magnus has 3 or 4 skills if you want to be political. And if you're playing the pure Drajeweled Magnus version, you need to know all the skills. If you're playing the Ignis version, you do need to know the skills, but you won't be using them as much. So let me explain. Drajeweled Magnus has a few skill timings that check certain intervals, so it is to your best interest to actually remember these skills, you know, so that you actually don't miss out, because, you know, if you miss out, that would be pretty sad. At the beginning of your right phase, choose up to 2 cards from your drop and you can move them into the soul. So he not only steals a bit of Fafnir's mechanic now, but he also has a built-in Sargon at the beginning of your right phase. But that means that you can only use this on turn 4 onwards, because when you ride Drajeweled Magnus for the first time, you don't actually get the start of right phase, right? Because he's not there at the start of right phase. The second skill is at the beginning of the battle phase, if your soul has a card with Drajeweled in its card name, all of your front row units get 5 until the end of the turn. So this is why having a card like Glint matters a lot, right? Because you get to just top 5 and throw cards to soul, be it another Drajeweled name, be it hell the same Drajeweled name, it doesn't matter. All that matters is if you have a Drajeweled in soul, this is going to check that, and your front row will get a free 5,000 power. Now, I'll get to the parallels later, so let me just go through the skills first if you don't mind. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, Soul Blast 4 cards with different grades. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguard, its power becomes 0, and if your opponent's Vanguard is greater or greater, this unit gets +1 critical. Okay? If you did get a critical and your damage zone has 4 more cards this turn, or if you Persona Route this turn, choose one of your rearguards with Demonic Jewel Dragon in its card name, and it gets auto on the rearguard circle once per turn. When it attacks, discard a card, the unit's drive becomes 1 and performs drive checks until the end of the battle, until the end of the turn. So, what the hell does this do? Well, to summarize, right, so basically, the start of the right phase, when he's already there, you can just choose 2 cards from your drop and chunk them into the soul, right? I think that's pretty easy. And at the beginning of your battle phase, if you already have a Drajeweled in the soul, your front row will get 5, right? So it checks at the beginning of the battle phase, not middle of the battle phase when he attacks. Only at the beginning of the battle phase. Then he checks that and your front row gets 5. Then, when he attacks, you Soul Blast 4 cards of different grade. So, you know, 0, 1, 2, 3. So you Soul Blast out these 4 cards. From your soul, when Drajeweled attacks, you blast them all out. Out they go. Then after that, you choose one of your rear guards. No, you choose your opponent's Vanguard. Its power drops to 0, not 1. 0. And then if your opponent's Vanguard is greater or greater, this unit gets +1 critical. Okay, pretty cool. And then after that, if you gained a critical by this effect, and then it checks another effect, either you Persona Road this turn, right? If you Persona Road this turn, or if your damage zone has 4 more cards, right? If you're at limit break 4, right, and you have 4 more cards in the damage zone, you can then choose a card from your. You can then choose one of your rear guards with the Demonic Jewel Dragon in its name. Now, I know what you're asking, Amis, is there a Demonic Jewel Dragon archetype? Yes, all of the Drajeweled looking friends who are grade 3 are all Demonic Jewel Dragon. Drajeweled himself is a Demonic Jewel Dragon. Jewel is a Demonic Jewel Dragon. Ristal Galore is a Demonic Jewel Dragon, and these are all options that you can play. However, none of your grade 2s and lower are Demonic Jewel Dragons. These are Demonic Stone Dragons. If you can read the characters, you'll realize they're different. But in English, I'm guessing you guys can just read the words. But for the Japanese readers, do look at the second word, right? The word does change. It's not a treasure, it's not a jewel, it's a stone. So the grade 2s don't trigger, but the grade 3s do, okay? And basically, you give them 1 drive, you change their drive to 1, and you let them perform drive checks on the rear guard. So then when this guy attacks, he performs a drive check later on as your rear guard. Okay, so that's pretty much the entire Drajeweled skill for Magnus. Summarized, that's it. There is a lot of things to take note of. I will do the parallels right now because I'm going to straight away jump and compare it to. In this deck, we play 4 copies of Drajeweled Ignis, because like I said, this is the Drajeweled Ignis version of the deck. So I think I can take it to assume everyone knows what Ignis does. So I won't really get into the nitty gritty. Ignis is literally just a power crap up version of the original Drajeweled. So he turns all Drajeweled in the souls to be counted as of any grade. So let me just make sure I have the correct phrasing on that, because I would hate to tell you the wrong thing. So basically, yes, Drajeweled Ignis basically converts. He has a continuous skill that says this card can only be ridden. Yeah, this card can only be ridden from a unit with Drajeweled its card name. So I mean that's the Ezel clause. The second skill is at the beginning of the battle phase, choose up to 2 cards from your drop, put them in a soul. If your soul has 4 more cards of different grades, all of your front row gets 15,000 power to end of turn. So again, this sounds very similar to Magnus, right? We already knew this. But the difference is that, you know, Ignis doesn't check for a Drajeweled name. His skill later on has a Drajeweled clause, but he's just, you know, start the battle phase, just move 2 cards in, plus 15k to the front row. Simple, effective. But then again, you did give up the persona right for that, right? If you compare it to Drajeweled Magnus, Magnus can give the front row 5k if you Drajeweled in soul, but then, you know, if you persona right, you know, then you actually hit the 15k threshold. If not, you only give the front row 5k. So that's a bit of a bummer. Right, and then later on, the Drajeweled Ignis skill is when you are paying the cost for this ability, you can Soul Blast cards with Drajeweled in its card name for your soul as any grade from 0 to 4. When this unit attacks, Soul Blast 5 cards with different grades, retire all of your opponent's back row rear guards. Until the end of the turn, this unit gets crit +1, and increase or decrease all of your opponent's front row to 0. So, not only does he shrink everybody in your opponent's front row, which, you know, it doesn't really matter considering your opponent is mainly the guy you're attacking. You get a crit, which is the same. You can Soul Blast 5 cards with different grades, right? So your old Drajeweled names do count, right? Any Drajeweled name. And then after that, you also get a free burn of the opponent's back row, on top of the 15k to the front row that you already got. So, like I said, Drajeweled Ignis is still a virtual nightmare to play against, because this is an endgame most people just do not survive against. But have you noticed something? If you've paid attention to both skills I've read, you're gonna realize this straight away, and that is that to play Drajeweled Ignis, you actually need Drajeweled Magnus. And I don't mean that in the terms of the, oh, obviously it's the Drajeweled deck. No, Drajeweled Magnus benefits when you have a Drajeweled in soul. Drajeweled Ignis benefits if you have a Drajeweled in soul, right? Because they count as of same grade. So even if you have another Ignis, you can just chuck that in. And now you can consider this as 2 different grades as compared to when you did not. But now, if you play more Drajeweled cards in general, you are increasing the chances of both effects triggering together. So again, that obviously means that, you know, you can trigger Drajeweled Magnus' skill earlier. You can also trigger Ignis' skill more on time, and that is a huge plus point in terms of Ignis, right? Because that's the main end goal. But then again, for Drajeweled himself, if you're playing Pure Magnus, it does mean you only really have, like, you know, 3 total names, because you only have 3 other Drajeweleds in the main deck. So that is something you have to consider. But yeah, honestly, this is something I want to talk about later on, because I'm going to talk about overall the whole Ignis axis, but we'll get there. Again, this is going to be a long video because there is a lot of factors I need to break down, so please bear with me. Our grade 3s, we play 1 copy of Magnus in the right deck and 2 in the main deck. So again, this is no surprise, but because this is the Ignis version, we don't play 4 Magnus, right? We do only play 3 total. Then we play 3 copies of Noctalgio, who is, you know, the best grade 4 Dark State support ever. Check out our Chronojet video if you're interested. We play 1 copy of our Forbidal Surrogate. This is our Regalis piece. Again, this only makes sense because we play Ignis. If we don't play Ignis though, this card also leaves the deck. And 3 copies of Drajeweld. Drajeweld is, to put it nicely, it is the Magnus support, right? Like, do I need to explain this one? I probably will, since this is the only new card here. For Drajeweld doesn't really sound like a grade 3, and let me tell you why. Drajeweld Dragon's abilities are as follows, which is, when his unit is put on the Guardian Circle, choose a grade 3 of Drajeweld in its card name for your right deck and reveal it. If you reveal the card, all your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater of Drajeweled, this unit gets 5,000 shield until the end of the turn. So technically, he's just another, 5k shield in the deck, which is nice that they phrase it that way. I think they know that, Drajeweled decks tend to have a lot of shieldless cards, no matter the version. So I guess it is appreciated that they made one of their grade 3s a semi-grade 2. But why does this card have to be a grade 3 is because of its skills later on. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard of Drajeweled in its card name, this unit gets the following skills as stated. 1. When this unit is placed on a rearguard circle during your main phase, you can soul charge 1. Then you can pay 3 energy blasts, choose a grade 3 or less card from your soul with a different card name as this unit, and call it to a rearguard circle. So, it's 4 Revolters, right? That's what this is. It's 4 Revolters. But there is a catch, which I'll get to that later. This is not the only guy with that skill. The second of this skill is when this unit attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, if your damage zone has 4 more cards, limit break, this unit's drive becomes 2 to the end of the battle. Which again seems really weird because why would I need a rearguard to change his drives to 2? Like, is there a way for my rearguards to do drive check? Yes. So in the pure Drajeweled deck, right, in the one I already mentioned previously, sorry, not pure Drajeweled deck, in the pure Drajeweled Magnus deck, you have a very slim axis in the sense that you only play 4 of this, you call it a day. The second you incorporate Ignis, your deck changes to become very top heavy, and all these extra cards come into play. So again, that is the difference between these two, is that you have a lot more higher grade cards to consider if you're playing Ignis, but if you are just playing pure Drajeweled Magnus, you don't have to worry about that. You have space to play more stuff at a lower grade. So yeah, that again, these are just talking points I need to bring up because there is fact points of comparisons for everything, and it's only gonna get worse when we reach the grade 2s. Our grade 2s, in this right deck, we are playing Luster, but again, as I mentioned, there is no difference. There is no shame. There is no shame if you choose to play the other right deck. It's completely fine. Play 2 copies of Impulsor, 4 copies of Little Saga, and then for Ignis support, we still play 4 copies of Zaga. So let's break it down. Little Saga is the 4-off in every Drajeweled deck from now on. I mean, this one needs no explanation. He's a gun cycler on lakes. If you think about it, he's just on place EV3, draw 1 lol. He's a 20 key beater, and he's still a Rock Augur clone where he stands himself. Frankly, it's a pure power creep of the original Rock Augur. Little Saga is definitely a card that will stay until the whole format gets rebooted. Can I even say that? Because it's just that good. Like, this is such an integral part of the deck now that they just retrained and made a stronger Rock Augur, right? So Little Saga, you're definitely welcome here. I wonder if Little Saga has any relation to Rock Augur, but that's probably irrelevant. Impulsor is a card I don't see often in much Drajeweled decks, but I'm willing to consider it for this version of the deck because, at 2, because we do still have one other card in this deck that I will cover later on. That, of course, is good old Vapula. But if not, for her skill herself, for Impulsor, it is on the front row rearguard circle, when your Vanguard pays the cost of Soul Blast 4 or more, and none of your units have stood this turn yet, you can stand this card. If you do, at the end of the battle, at the end of the turn, you can retire this unit, choose a grade 2 or greater card from among them that's a normal unit, and add it back to your hand. So Impulsor is a free restat, although she doesn't get any abilities or stats by herself, so I guess that's a bit of a bummer. But I did say but, she does allow you to add a grade 2 or greater card from your soul back to your hand. You can use this to loop your persona rights, right? For the Pure Magnus deck, you absolutely will still play Impulsor because this is a great way to do so. Any of the cards that you soul charge in their grade 2 or greater with, not this guy, sorry, with, where is he? With Glint, right? You can just 2-box it back, so if you want to ensure you still have your copies of Little Saga, you absolutely can. You can also try and search for Geodraw, you absolutely can. Or later on down the line, if you are playing Pure Ignis, you can add back copies of Nostalgia, who is a 15k shield for the Ignis deck. So again, this card is pretty handy for both decks, but I think the ratio is the only thing that people will need to discuss. There are some decks that just don't play this card at all, which is probably to my greatest chagrin. I don't understand why. Isn't this card really good? But the 4-off that people will play for the Ignis deck is definitely 4 copies of Zagan. Now, Zagan is the other guy I alluded to previously, the one who shares a very similar skill with Drajeweled. To be fair, Zagan did come first, so yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Zagan's skill is, they all bear a similar skill, all of the supports for this deck, wherein they all need to either check your Vanguard is Drajeweled Ignis, or if you already have a Drajeweled Ignis out in the wild. So at face value, while that sounds pretty okay, that does mean you actively always need to carry your copies of Ignis in your hand. So that's kind of telegraph information for your opponent in terms of your hand. But who cares? You're here to win. When placed on a Vanguard circle, you can soul charge 1. If your hand has a grade 4 Drajeweled that you can reveal, or if your Vanguard is a grade 4 Drajeweled, you can choose a card from your soul with a different name and call it to the Vanguard circle. At the end of the turn though, you have to move that card back to the soul. And then of course, if your Vanguard is a Drajeweled unit, this unit also has boost as a continuous skill. So this guy is just a free way to build a board, right? All you have to do is just publish that you have an Ignis in your hand, which you obviously would, and then you just get a free body on the board. You can just build your board very easily. You can call out your Little Saga. You can even call out another copy of Drajeweld, right? Because Drajeweld doesn't say when placed on hand. So you can combo Zagan into Drajeweld into somebody else, and that's absolutely fine. So the board building applications for what's his name? For Ignis is really strong with this card. However, this guy's call only lasts for the turn. After that, it moves back to the soul. So, you don't really plus. It's kind of a net 0, but it's a really strong net 0 in that. Again, this is part of the Drajeweled Ignis line, so you do need to play this if you play Ignis. But if you're not playing Ignis, you can ignore this guy for good. For our grade 1s, because yeah, we still have more. This video is far from over. We play our copy of Jewel Core Dragon. We are playing Glint, as you're saying. We're playing the new right line, but you can still play the old right line. We played 3 copies of Hot/Dragon for our Drajeweled Ignis axis. And if you want to talk more about Drajeweled Ignis axis, we also play for Vapula. And then for our Perfect Guards, we play for Perfect Guards. So as you can see, Ignis has now warped the entire deck's identity to the point that we don't have a single grade 1 that's not related to Ignis, right? That is the amount of slots that Drajeweled Ignis takes as a whole. So I will talk about that later in discussion. For Perfect Guards, this is pretty simple. We only can play this Sanctitude because we are currently playing Ignis in the deck, so Ignis doesn't allow us to play the other Sanctitude. However, if you are playing Pure Magnus, do note you can carry the other Sanctitude. It's not a concern. Okay, I just need to make sure everyone is clear here. And then moving on to the rest of the deck is all based on Ignis, baby. Hot/Dragon, we're playing it at a 3-off. Traditionally, this is where people play their Bifrons, right? But if you're playing the Ignis deck, you need to open Drajeweled Ignis. If you don't open Drajeweled Ignis, you lose the game. So I'm sticking to Hot/ for the Ignis deck. But again, if you're not planning to play the Ignis deck, you don't need this. When placed on the Vanguard circle, count +1, look at the top 7 cards in your deck. Choose a grade 4 Drajeweld choose a card that's a grade 4 Drajeweld, add it to your hand and shuffle the deck. If you didn't get to add a grade 4 Drajeweld and you already have one in your hand, you can just draw a card instead. So basically, it's a CB1 draw 1, so hello Vipatsuka, the Overflyer. Or, if not, this is your top 7 Drajeweld search, which does make it pretty handy. Again, we're only playing this at 3, even though we die the Ignis, is because we don't want to play too many and we don't have that many slots left. But if you're not playing Ignis, you can obviously throw this out. You will not need Hot/ at all. Vapula, for those of you who remember my El Calibra video, this is his predecessor. Vapula is basically the grade 1 rearguard that allows Ignis to withstand any of his non-withstanding rearguards, which sounds like a mouthful, but then again, remember, you are playing rearguards in this deck that don't withstand. Stuff like Drajeweld, right? So this is your one way out to ensure you will always hit your 5 multi-attacks, no matter what. And of course, it is tied to Ignis. Vapula's skill is when your Vanguard pays Soul Blast 4 or more for its cost of its ability, you can move this card into the Soul and then reveal a grade 4 Drajeweld in your hand. If you don't reveal a grade 4 Drajeweld in your hand, but instead your Vanguard is already a grade 4 Drajeweld, you can still continue to use the effect. wherein you can choose one of your own rearguards that have not stood up. Oh, yeah, and standing. But you have to use this first before you trigger your other restands, because it does say if none of your rearguards have restood yet. Right? But when you move into the soul, you do get to just straight away draw. So technically, it is already an N0, but the restand comes from publishing your Drajeweled Ignis, or if you already have one. So again, you don't really care about Vapula in terms of the net zero draw. I mean, that's the least of your concerns. What you're more concerned about is that, you know, you get a free restand, guys. Like, it's just so good. But it is tied to you needing to play Drajeweled Ignis. If you don't play Drajeweled Ignis, you don't need this. Technically, Vapula is the most win more card in Drajeweled, but like, considering how good Vapula is for the Ignis deck, I would not cut this guy at all. He's so good for Ignis. But if you're not playing Ignis, you don't need him. The other thing about Vapula I do need to say though is that you can call him early on to attack and stuff, but like, you know, you ideally want him in the soul so you can recall him back out later on with another Zagan or your Geodraw, right? So for the Ignis deck, you do have multiple ways to multi-attack and rebuild the board, and then after that ensure that they can continually multi-attack. So it's not all bad. This Ignis deck, if I can leave any impression on you, is that despite the fact that most of these are reprinted common, they are very, very strong still. And then our grade zeros, we are playing a starter, because, you know, obviously we need to play a starter. I don't think I need to discuss this one. The triggers stay the same whether you are Drajeweled Ignis or Magnus. It's 1 over trigger, 3 draw, 8 crits obviously, and then 4 heal. So no discussion needed there. So yeah. Now for the big part you all been waiting for. The conclusions. So what do I think about this deck overall? Well, as you can see here, right? As you can see here, a lot of this deck, for this deck profile, is taken up by the Ignis support. I've actually been portioning it out. If you look at this deck as a whole, right, now that I've gone through the whole deck, you know what this list looks like. You will notice that for the Ignis support, you play 1 Formidor, 3 Nostalgia, or maybe 4, it's up to you. 4 Ignis, obviously, 4 Sagan, 3 Vapula, and then 3 Hot Slash, right? But Hot Slash, again, it's a bit more of a flexible slot. You can play it at 2, you can play it at whatever. But you're gonna notice this is not only all the reprinted commons, this is half the deck. I'm not kidding. All this makes half the deck. You wanna see what else we're left with the deck? Here is the non-Ignis cards. 2 Drajeweled, but then again, if you play Magnus, you'll play 3, 3 Geodraw, but then again, we'll play 4 Geodraw if you're playing Pure Magnus. 4 Little Saga, who is the only guy that's consistently at a 4. 2 Impusa, 4 Perfect Guard. That's it. This is what's left of non-Ignis Drajeweled. I just want to make sure that we all have a visual here. This is all you get when it comes to talking about, oh, what's the new stuff in Drajeweled? And mind you, this is the compulsory stuff, right? This is from set 10, this is from set 8, this is from set 10. This is all the stuff you need to play. Perfect Guards, and Pusa, it's technically just a 2-off, but this is all you get from playing Drajeweled this year. Everything else that you've already known and loved in Drajeweled comes from a deck that has existed for the last 2 years. Do you see the stark difference here? It's insane. How do you give support to a deck that already has everything? The fact that none of these cards in Drajeweled Ignis' playset has been replaced yet is shocking as a reminder on the power level they allowed to come out in DBT 13, and more importantly, the power level that the designers continually have to play around when designing this. There's a reason why these cards, right, when you read stuff like Pure Magnus, just seems so weird and out of place. It's because they need to bear the cross that they built for themselves 2 years ago. And that means the future of Drajeweled is really, really weird, right? When you talk about Drajeweled in terms of a deck, when you talk about it in terms of its future, what is the future of Drajeweled Magnus as a whole? Like, you're gonna need to obviously play, the mass plays, you obviously will play Draw, who's designed for Magnus, you'll play Little Saga, who's necessary, you will play the Vanguards, obviously, and you'll just play a few extra Dark States generics and whatnot. But how do you reconcile this? How do you, in good faith, tell yourself, oh, one day I'm gonna replace all of this? For my channel members, for those of you, like I said, if you are joining channel members, you would see that I have my Pure Drajeweled Magnus deck profile, which will be up for the members list. That list will be up, so you can take a look at it. You're going to realize that most of it is just Dark States generics and or 1 to 2 cards that actually have incidental synergy with Drajeweled Magnus. Again, this is only for my channel members, but as a whole, just look at how much Ignis takes up. How exactly is Bushiroad planning to innovate this deck out of Ignis? Like, I frankly have no clue. And that may be why, despite how most people say, oh, I love Youthbird Rebuild because Youthbird Rebuild saved me from, the terrible death that was, what's the thing called? Full Blast. And I know people, they're like, oh, I hate Full Blast. It's such a brainless design. Yeah, you say that, but these are the same people who would stand by you and say, yeah, Drajeweled Ignis is a great deck. It's the same deck. I know the deck is good. We've proven the deck is good. But you're playing the same deck for 3 years now. How is... Really, Bushiroad needs to either straight up start banning Drajeweled cards, which I don't think they will unless this becomes the next best deck format, which I also don't think so, because the Magnus stuff was printed so lame that they made it so that you could have these two exist in the same format. But this really stifles creativity. This stifles the design space. Like, you really have to print something insanely broken at this point for Magnus to be able to outshine Ignis in terms of being a deck core. It just... I really just have to end the video there. That's really just the main takeaway. Like, I'm talking about what is the future of Drajeweled Magnus, right? And you just look at this and tell yourself, do you even have a future? I don't know. But that's where I'm actually going to leave it to you, the audience. Because I know my comment section, you guys really love to talk about Drajeweled. As I've mentioned here, I brought up a lot of talking points for Drajeweled. I've talked about all the Ignis support, I've talked about the Magnus support, I've talked about the multiple right decks that you can play in this deck. Who's right and who's wrong? This list I presented for Drajeweled Ignis, by the way, is not the one true list of Drajeweled Ignis. I don't believe I've solved that formula. In fact, I believe none of you have. So hop into the comment section and let's start discussing on what exactly this deck is supposed to look like. Like, what is the best way to play Drajeweled? Is it actually just to continue playing Ignis? Does Magnus have a secret tag that nobody knows about, including myself? Is the right line the right way to play it? Do we need to play the original Drajeweled? God knows, really. But that's what this community, that's what the whole point of discussing and having videos is all about. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to improve our decks and learn stuff and, just grow as not just players, but as people. And I don't know, I don't think Drajeweled can grow very much, but maybe we can. Maybe we can, from this limited design space, we too can break forth and come up with another tier 0 broken bullshit that hopefully kills Basakra. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.